Hey everybody, Mike Harrelson here with Article 2 Industries. Welcome to the Article 2 Industries video production studio and dry fire facility. Great place. We get to use it anytime my wife's car is not parked in here. So welcome. We're going to talk about shooting. We're going to talk about dry fire and how to make you better in competition and personal defense. And we got just the guy for it. Some of you who saw Mike Ricker's video series will remember his bio. And by the way, welcome Mike. Good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
This is the guy for this because he has a long and storied career with carrying a gun for a living and competing with a gun. Mike was a local law enforcement officer and firearms instructor for a local agency outside of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Went to the Army, became a Ranger, shot competitively, and coached rifle and pistol teams while in the Army. Came out of the Army, became a DEA agent, became a point man on raid team, and became a DEA firearms instructor. Went from there in other federal law enforcement capacities with the United States Forest Service and Homeland Security. Also firearms instructor through those capacities. Became a competitive shooter. A lot of cops don't shoot as much as they should. This guy does. Won the USPSA Unlimited Class in the state of Texas in 1995, if memory serves me right.
It's a long time ago. I barely remember myself. It's a long time ago.
That's a lot of shooting to get to that level. So that's why we're bringing Mike on here. We're going to do a series of dry fire tips and tricks to help you become a better shooter.
Yep.
Mike, where are we going to start today?
Well, I mean, Mike, probably the best thing to do is get everybody's input on what they want to accomplish. I mean, dry firing is probably the most critical tool because it's the one that you can do for nothing. Ammunition costs, and unless you have an unlimited budget or you work for an agency where you can go in and get 2,000 or 3,000 rounds at a shot, pardon the pun, you need to practice your dry fire. Even the men and women that are on specialized teams in federal law enforcement use dry fire to keep their skills honed. It marries your hand to the gun, marries your trigger finger to the sear. Your eyes pick up the target a lot more readily whenever you practice your dry firing regimens.
We'll use the same techniques for defensive shooting as I would in competitive shooting, or are we going to do different things?
Absolutely. Your sight picture is going to be the same. Your sight picture is going to be the same. The way you use your sight picture is going to be a little bit different. A lot of raid team members, we are trained to get up onto our sights. We're trained to look through the sights. You have both eyes open, of course. You're looking at a very large picture, so the more advanced pistol shooters will develop a skill set that allows them to float the sights in front of their eyes, always keeping them oriented to the target, but they aren't really looking at the sights. So, but that's very advanced. That's tens of thousands of hours and rounds later. Right now, with this particular series, we're probably going to be dealing more with the how to set it up, the safety considerations, the home considerations. So people will be safe. Whenever they enter into the environment, they know they have a very practical, reasonable goal, because there are some things that you cannot get out of a dry firing practice session. First of all, when you shoot a pistol at a target, a standard target, using bullets, you can see the holes.
Right.
So you have feedback. If you're shooting steel, you can hear the ping. Dry firing, you can't. And there are certain considerations that you have to understand in order to effectively use your dry firing and get progress out of it. And hopefully we'll be able to provide the viewers with a little bit of that.
Okay, very good. So stay with us. We're going to start with how to get set up. Dry fire is one of those things that sounds so simple, it sounds like you just go do it. But like everything else, to be effective, there's a method to the madness, and that's where we're going to start.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned. So as a young police cadet, firearms instructors in the academy, in talking about dry fire, set the young cadets up to dry fire sitting at home in the evening, focusing on sight picture and trigger control and trigger reset. There's baby steps coming from a crawl because they're literally instructing people who had not shot a gun, particularly a handgun, prior to entering the police academy. This is going to be very different. We're going to talk about everything being purpose driven. When you manage your time and you're gonna dry fire, you're taking time out in the evening from your routine, from your family, and spending time on this, everything should be purposeful, yes?
Absolutely, absolutely. And dry firing is one of those things that when you do, if you don't do it with a purpose, with an actual goal in mind, it's going to become mind-numbingly boring quick.
Mhm.
Because one of the things, Mike, that people need to consider is dry firing 10 or 20 times doesn't do you as much good as dry firing 10 or 20,000 times.
Mhm.
So prepare yourself for the long haul. One of the things I like to tell my students is establish some near-term and far-term goals for yourself. This is a great way to establish that honey spot out in front of your eyes, where your eyes will automatically go to the sights. There's more than just lining up left and right, straight across the top, trigger press, undisturbed sight picture, brake, hold, release.
Okay.
There's much more to it than that, and that's some of the things that we'll touch on as we continue on.
Okay, so we got a quiet room,
Mm-hmm.
living room, garage, wherever you're going to set up for dry fire practice. How do we get started?
Well, the first consideration that I would always recommend, and always first and foremost with all firearms related activities, is safety. Safety, safety, safety. Always adhere to the maximum tenet of gun handling. Treat every gun as if it's loaded. That way, no matter if somehow you overlook around in the chamber, if you're treating every gun as if it's loaded, vis-a-vis, you never point a loaded gun at anybody you don't want to harm or anything you don't want to harm. You will, if it does happen to go off, it will go off in a direction that will cause the least possible amount of human and or collateral damage.
Sure.
That's the tenet. We use the same tenets in dry firing. You know that your gun's empty, but if the phone goes off, you walk away to the phone, somebody comes up, looks at the gun, notices a magazine sitting on the table next to you, loads one, looks at it, puts it down. 5 minutes later you come back, you pick up the gun. There are cases in the books where this has happened to people.
Again and again.
Again and again. You reach out there, you dry fire, what you think is a dry fire, you drop a hammer on a live primer, next thing you know, you got an upset neighbor because you just put a hole in his wall.
Mm-hmm.
These are the kind of things we have to consider. So first and foremost, when we come to an atmosphere and we declare it a dry fire atmosphere, we have to take out every bit of ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
There can't be any ammunition in the room. Any ammunition in the room, any ammunition on a person must go into an entirely different room.
Mm-hmm.
Preferably, if you have a facility like a house or a range facility that you're going to be working at, you need to go on ahead and try to get a room or a section of a room that you can segregate away from everybody else, and nobody else will go to. So if there's children in the house, you need to be able to put a barrier up to keep the children away from the particular room that you're going to be in. The barrier serves as also another internal or mental block, and that once you leave this room, everything in here reverts back to live again.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come back, you have to go through the same process again.
Mm-hmm.
There was I'm leaving names out, I'm leaving agencies out for legal purposes, of course. And the reasons why we go to such extremes. 2 law enforcement officers back in the day of wheel guns. They were in the locker room of their agency. They were practicing their quick draws. Both firearms instructors, both exceedingly good gun handlers and exceptional shots. This was back in the day of the Widowmaker holster. Quick drawing was a thing that officers did a lot at the time. They had been practicing it for a couple of hours. They were about to go on shift. They got their gear on. They loaded up. They turned to walk out the door. One of them says, "Hey, Tom." Tom turns around. He goes, "Draw." The officer drew and shot his mate right in the belly button because they had not gone through the proper steps. All the things I'm going to tell you today are going to be predicated upon somebody else's disaster. So take them to heart. Know that they're given to you for a reason, and hopefully you'll be able to conduct your dry firing sessions without any difficulty whatsoever.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Where do we start?
Well, again, first thing we're going to do is we're going to come into the room, we're going to sterilize the room. As you can see, for demonstration purposes only, I have a standard 1911 Wilson's CQB combat right here. But for all my demonstrations, I'm going to be utilizing an inert plastic Glock. It's a training aid. This happens to be a model of Glock 17. You can get these through common outlets. As you can see by the end of it, there is no barrel. It's all one piece of plastic. It cannot go off. It is not a firearm. In law enforcement and the military, we use these to practice our weapons retention drills and our takeaway drills. Now, there is also an added benefit. You can use these to practice as you're going through your house. As you're approaching a barrier or some type of portal, you can pull the gun back, slice the pie, without any fear of putting it around through a wall. So these are good. So you'll see me handling this a lot today. I won't be handling the 1911 and with the exception of a couple of drills. And when we do, what's going to wind up happening is we're going to clear it, we're going to utilize it, we're going to make it clear again, and then we're going to put it away. So those are the kind of things that we'll try to do, if that sounds good to you.
Very good.
Okay. The other thing you want to look at is you want to look at your backstop. One of the rules in gun handling tenets is you know your backstop and know the maximum penetration of it. This is just a standard exterior wall. A bullet will go through this. So what we want to know is what's beyond this backstop. Because again, don't point a gun at anything, and to include during dry fire practices, you don't want to point a gun at anything that you're not willing to destroy or kill. So what we have behind this is a creek bed. It's back behind this about another 20 yards. So this direction would be safe. If a bullet were to happen to pass through this wall and go, it would rest harmlessly in the far side of the creek bank. So we'd be good at that, I'm sure. So you need to set up on the interior of your house or wherever you're going to conduct your dry firing exercise, and make sure that what's beyond that is safe. Might not be a bad idea also to have it in a location where your neighbors won't be able to see inside the house and see you clicking away at your wall. They might accidentally mistake it for something else. So
You might get a knock on the door from the police.
exactly. So you might want to take that into consideration. So let's see. We've looked at our facilities. We've looked at our weapons. We've sterilized our room. We've sterilized the people in the house. We've separated them out into a different area of the house. Now let's look at something else that we want to consider. If you are just doing nothing but practicing, Mike, if you're out on the range and you want to see how your 1911 is and you're out there practicing and practicing and practicing, you load it up after you're done, you holster, and you go about your day. Your sidearm's with you. But when you come into a dry fire exercise, the problem comes in that you're going to be dry firing with the same weapon that's typically loaded every day. So how do you separate the mental aspects of having a weapon that's loaded every day, that you carry every day loaded, and now you're going to shoot it empty, and then you're going to have to carry on with your day after the session. And this is how you do this. When I come into a dry firing session, this is what I teach my students, this is what I taught while I was with federal agencies to the basic agent trainees and to the advanced students. You take your service weapon, you sterilize the room. You sterilize the room, make sure there's no rounds in the room. You clear your area of non-essential personnel. Everybody goes outside, you shut the door. That barrier, that door shutting, tells you this is now a dry fire room. You come into the room, the weapon has been checked, it's empty. The way that you properly check the weapon, and again we're holding a live 1911. In this case, you have a magazine well. The weapon will be if it's 1911, it'll be cocked and locked. There'll be a magazine inserted. We want to inspect the magazine well to make sure the magazine well is empty. You always drop the source ammunition first. You lock the slide to the rear. Make sure that there's nothing in the ejection port. You physically, or you visually and then physically check the chamber to make sure that there's nothing in the chamber. You pause, you look away, you break your concentration. Then you come back and you do the same thing again. You check the magazine well, you see it's empty, you stick your finger in there, battle it around, there's nothing in there. You look at the chamber, there's nothing in the chamber, physically you stick your finger in there. Then you look inside the bore, there's nothing in the bore, stick your finger in there, sure enough it's empty. Now the weapon has been rendered safe. Would you agree?
Clear.
Okay. Let the slide go forward on 1911, you carry it forward. Now this weapon is ready to use in dry fire exercises. So you don't have anything in here There's no magazines, there's no ammunition. You conduct your dry fire exercise. After you're done, lock the weapon to the rear and place it on the table. Place it on the table, ensure that this area is empty. Then you walk outside that door for a few minutes, get you a 7-Up, cup of coffee, whatever. Come back in. Now when you come back in, if you have your magazine with you, it's fully loaded, it's ready to go into the weapon. You insert it into the weapon, and as you're inserting it into the weapon, you say this mantra to yourself: I'm loading my weapon, I'm loading my weapon, I'm loading my weapon. Say it to yourself 3 times. Say it loud enough to where it's almost conspicuous. I'm loading my weapon, I'm loading my weapon. Make sure you hear it, okay? Let the slide go forward. My weapon is loaded, my weapon is loaded, my weapon is loaded. Make sure everything is safe. Holster up or put it in whatever storage device that you deem fit. And that's how you securely enter into and exit out of a dry fire scenario.
Very good.
Yeah.